Okay, no one's joined the meeting yet. Hopefully it's actually online. It looks like it is on my end anyways. I will try to get this started a little bit here. Okay, River joined us. Thank you for joining us. Or at this stage, it's only me. It's only me and you today. But the meeting just got started. We might have some people joining a little bit later. But if you've never done this before, you can ask questions in the chat window. If you open up the Zoom group chat window, you should be able to just type questions there. I'm doing it right now just to test it and make sure it works. But yes, thanks for joining. Today I'm going to be building, I'm going to try building a space using the prototypes that, that were originally created by Amelia and that I later recreated as FBX exports, because a lot of people had trouble viewing the MA files. Like if you look here in my project directory, you can see two versions of each of the prototypes that we used in the levels. And the first one in each case is, if you look down in the, well, I don't know, the sort of this little detail window down here, lists the MA ones. I'm just going to go ahead and delete these so I don't mix them up in the course of the scene. So I'm only using the FBXs. They have exactly the same geometry. They're just different file format, that's all. Okay, so now we're down to the basics here. This is the assignment V2 Unity file that I created, that I duplicated from Amelia's original one, just so that it had instances of the FBX exports that I made. For some reason, my terrain materials are missing. I'm going to see if I can fix this up really quick. Let's see. So yeah, we see there's no terrain layers for whatever reason. I'm not even sure, but we can, let's add some existing ones here. What if I can add more than one at once? No, I can't. But I'll just add them like this. We have moss, they're in moss, a different kind of moss. I guess it looks almost like the same moss. I'll probably delete this one. Can I? I don't even know if I can. So I'll add the mud layer. I don't know how much I'll actually be using these in this demo today, but I'll add them anyway, in case I want to. And stone, which is kind of grayish. River, can you hear me? I just wanted to double check to make sure. Can you type in the chat window if you let me know if you can hear me? My mic audio says it's broadcasting, but I just want to make sure. I usually ask people at the beginning of a demo to see if it's actually broadcasting. Okay, so yeah, it looks like Tetovic joined us also. Thank you for joining. I'm going to do a demo here today based on the prototypes that Amelia gave for the assignment. So yeah, it's my first step. I'm not even sure if I'll use the terrain, probably not. But just to make sure it's not white, I'll select a terrain layer and I'll go to paint texture and I'll just paint it all solid green. Just so we don't have this white staring us in the face. Okay, green, there we go. Yeah, so can everybody hear me? No one's responded yet. I just want to double check and make sure people can actually hear me. Okay, good. Thank you. Just want to hide this canvas, which is way too big and really obnoxious. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to, I think for this demo, I'm just going to, let's see, where's the terrain? I'm just going to work from the Maze Runner concept art, point out a few things that occurred to me as I was reviewing some of the assignments. Let's paint again, there it is, okay. And I'm going to try to build out some examples that go over some of the concepts in the lectures. I'm going to try to show some possibilities of how we can use positive versus negative space to influence the player path, to sort of make the player want to explore certain areas and not others, to make them linger in areas we want to, and make them quickly move through areas that we don't find interesting in our level designs. And I'm going to, if I can, show some kind of nebulous spaces and how those things can be created by accident, really, when they're unintentional. And yeah, and maybe maybe some uses of occlusion as well. That would all be beneficial. So I'm going to pull up the concept art, and I want to talk about the Maze Runner concept art, which I assume it appears it also inspired Unity. Just okay. The concept art looks like it also inspired you know, a lot of the prototypes that were provided for the assignment. But I also wanted to point out some assignments got really kind of complicated and busy with their geometry, and it's not really necessary. You have to decide like when it's appropriate to add extra geometry. Like for instance, this Jean-Pierre Ugarte landscape painting. This is created, if you break this down into simple geometry, this is created in its most basic form. The major pieces of geometry are the framing element on the ceiling. There's 1, there's 2 here on the right. There's 3, this low wall. There's 4, this bridge. There's 5, this other wall. I'm not even counting this like raised or this sort of pronounced surface here that connects to the bridge. I'm just thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then down in the distance, this is stuff in the distance. We have like 6, 7, 8. It's like really simple pieces of geometry. And I feel like when you start building your levels, you need to think that about the most basic shapes and forms. Even all this vegetation is decoration really at the base of these walls, right? Like this is where you would add extra geo, but it would only be for detail. It you wouldn't be confusing the geometry used to create this vegetation and edges along the ground. You wouldn't be confusing that with the big solid blocks of geometry that show where possible paths might be for the player, like across this bridge. Oh, I said I should also add, I guess, another major block of geometry, of course, is just the ground, which you take for granted usually, but it's a major one. So that would be kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 5 in the foreground, really. That's about it. If we move on, and I realize these are easy examples for me to point this out in, but it's still important nonetheless. Like the Maze Runner is literally, it's a giant maze of really monumental architecture. So you have like 1 for the ground plane. It's sort of like 2 for this big wall, 3 for this detail wall, maybe up here. But even this is like 2 sections of a whole. Oh, thank you, Windows. 1, 2, 3, 4 over here, this huge block on the right, and then 5 in the distance. Like this is a really simple series of big shapes. This here, you have this giant wall here, which looks like it might divide a space over here with this space here with these giant step-like structures. So it's sort of like the space over here is like kind of 1, 2 is this big dividing wall, 3 is this very seemingly important falling pillar. And then even these steps, like you could say 4, 5, 6, 7, but it's sort of like this is one major shape divided into little ones. And then again, you have a grouping of shapes here, which sort of, this sort of counts as one shape as far as I'm concerned too. So it's sort of like 1, 2, 3 the ground plane, 4 this wall, 5 here, 6 here, and then this framing element on the right is 7. And if you were going to occlude this space, you could do it a few ways. One way might be maybe your character climbs up the back of this pillar right here and they look over the top. Another way might be maybe they entered the area from rounding a corner that was like, this was the corner, this really dark piece of geometry in the foreground, and they turn the corner and then they see this scene here. Another good way of occlusion might even be maybe the player finds a way up. Maybe they start on this side of the level environment and they find a way on top of this pillar here, and then the top of this pillar here shows them this sort of valley beyond. That could be ways that we could do that, that we could use occlusion to sort of reveal important views of the level design when we want to, when we find it's important in the progression of the gameplay. I think I'm going to work from this because it's pretty extreme and dynamic, and the framing is really nice of this strange giant, like massive machine. But again, you can see this is very clear. It's like one piece of geometry, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this is like, it gets more complicated, but only in the distance. And the other thing too is if we talk about positive versus negative space, it's interesting because these are really large monumental pieces of positive space. But if you look at the scale of the player is so small here that these almost become like negative space. If I can say I can like walk up and down these really not very steep inclines, this almost becomes negative space. There's really not much here. These little bits of detail are just detail, or greeblies, or whatever the term is when people are building models. Even here, like if they're walking on this giant plane, this becomes, sure, it's a giant positive slab, but it's almost like a giant ground plane. This becomes negative space. And then we have all these little elements of positive space, of positive mass that create this machine. And the detail of all these together, the cumulative effect of this, of course, is to draw us to want to move towards it and explore around it. So I think I'm going to try to play with that a little bit in the demo today. Again, this is really monumental and massive. One giant block of positive space here, maybe a path between this giant space and this giant positive space. That's 2. This here seems like maybe 3, maybe 4. This giant one here, even though there's like detail coming out of this, it's still kind of 5. And even this, like, this looks like a lot of complicated geometry, but if it's really just one big like pillar with a lot of things jutting out of it. So that's kind of 6, and then 7 for the ground plane. So it doesn't ever get that complicated, really. Yeah, and that's just student work, so I just wanted to show the concept art. So I'm going to work a little bit based off of this. So I'm going to move it off to my other screen. You can navigate to the link if you want to sort of like view the concept art while I'm working here. You can do it that way. And yeah, if you have questions, of course, of any kind during this demo, just feel free to post them in the chat window, and I will answer them as quickly as I can. Also, I wanted to check really quickly on my other screen if there were any. I know there were some Q&A questions posted in that forum. I'm just going to double check. Okay, yeah, Tatovic had one, and okay, good. Yeah, about actually, yeah, Tatovic, you asked about part of what I'm going to be doing here. When should we occlude paths? When should we occlude rewards, goals, destinations? I understood the overall uses of occlusion, but sometimes when taking decisions about distinct objects, it is hard to decide, does it need to be occluded? Yeah, and I realize these assignments are pretty open-ended. They leave a lot to you, the level designer, to decide upon. You have to kind of decide what kind of story do you want to tell in your level through the environment. For example, if I go back to this concept art, and often concept art is telling a high-level story of the environments that'll be seen, in this case in a movie, but this could easily be a game. This looks like it's trying to tell us like the ultimate goal of this adventurer is this golden machine or something, right? So because we say, for instance, the way we want to tell this story is the machine is massive, the machine is very important. It's an end goal. Maybe we want to show, we want to sort of tease it in the distance. We want to introduce it as an important element, but we want adventures to happen on the way there. A similar kind of analogy might be um, maybe there's a movie where there's a story, and the story is uh, you know maybe the overarching story. You know the very high level um, sort of narrative of the story. You know that like the main characters, the protagonists, will eventually reach a certain goal. Maybe it's an actual geometric or an actual like physical goal they'll reach. A really clear example of this is probably the Lord of the Rings movies, probably the Lord of the Rings movies, where you in the distance, you how many times do you see in the course of that movie? You see what is it, Mount Doom, where they throw the ring in the fire at the end. Um, but you know, it's such a huge, massive thing in the distance that they have so many adventures along the way. They travel through so many lands with very distinct environments that are different from each other, and they have separate, like smaller adventures on the way to their main adventure, which is to get to the fires of Mount Doom and throw the ring in there. Um, this is kind of a similar. This is in this case, this is kind of your Mount Doom. This like really massive machine in the distance. And you get the sense based on the progression of space into the distance that this machine is very, very large compared to the player. So yeah, that's one example. In other examples, let me look up. Half-Life 2 is always like a classic example. It's always held up as a pinnacle of design. So if we do the tower in the middle of City 17, the Combine Tower, is that what it was called? We do images. Let's see if we find it very quickly. Yeah, you see this tower like all over the place through the course of the level. This is a pretty good picture of it. It's going to let me open up the image. Sure. Okay. Well, I'll zoom in a little, but yeah, you see this tower. Half-Life 2 is really good at doing this kind of thing. They have like the immediate environment here. They do important things like they put a landmark in the middle. They're able to put this view screen that tells you the story of what's going on. But then at the same time in this frame shot, you hear the immediate story of what's going on with this scientist talking to you, or talking to the people of City 17, telling you the story of what's going on in the city. And then this tower in the distance tells you even the larger story of what's going on in the city, which is um, this invading group has, from another dimension, has built an alien tower in the middle of the city that dominates the land. It dominates it dominates this portion of the earth, right? So we know that as a player, because we keep seeing this tower, and our goal is to win. Our goal is to drive back the enemies to their dimension or whatever. Um, that this is the ultimate goal. So this is a good example of like we aren't really occluding the tower at most of the time, or many of the times in the game. We show it fairly frequently. So I'm going to kind of go with that possibility. That's one way to do it. It depends. Occlusion is often, it's also often done to sort of maintain interest. Like for instance, you might want to occlude, like say if you're building like more of an open world level, or more of a level with like a city with districts in it, or a town with different neighborhoods. If you make everything visible from one vantage point, you're standing in one district and it has a distinct flavor, and then you can see down a long street to another district. You know, you've automatically drained the drip feed of information, the drip feed of new discovery and fun. You've drained it by like showing it all at once, like giving someone all their presents at once instead of over time. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of that's the best kind of analogy I could make for that sort of mental process when you're thinking about when to occlude and when not to occlude. Another way, trying to think, occlusion is sometimes also, depending on the gameplay, it might be done to just break up areas into distinct areas where maybe there's different combat encounters. Even like that could be a good thing too. Hello, Denis. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so I think there was an example as well that I can share. Um, I worked on a game called Homefront a few years back. It was a single player game, first person shooter. And we had this, I was tasked with creating a level which was, it was based on, the narrative of the game was such that the world was sort of in chaos. It took place in the United States, but the United States was in chaos in the near future. Civilization had kind of collapsed as it was known, partially because an enemy force had detonated an EMP device, which killed all electronics for a time. It made planes fall from the sky, well, if they happened to be in the area. So we wanted to have this dramatic fight that told that story in an area. We wanted to combine a firefight in an environment that told that greater narrative of what had happened to the country. So we had this idea that one of the planes that was downed by the EMP blast, it crashed into a suburban neighborhood. So in order to tell that story, I had to sort of figure out. I had the player wandering through the ruins of a suburban neighborhood. So they're wandering through the wreckages of houses um, that were either abandoned or damaged or destroyed. And I had to figure out um, how I wanted to tell that story. So let's see. I think I actually lost I lost the video, but let's see. See if I can find it here. Okay, yeah, I have a video of it here. And I'll show you, like, this is the way that I dealt with occlusion. We often had like a story to tell in different areas. So here's one example. After the players, like, they fight at a gas station here. Let's see if I can bring this up. You can let me know if you can see this. Let's see. So they flee a burning gas station, and then we occlude the next area here. And they enter the backyard of a ruined house. So I don't want them to see what's in the street beyond, because it's kind of a surprise. There's kind of a bit of storytelling that we want to happen. Can you all see this video? I just want to make sure. Not that it's going to look really amazing or anything, but okay. So yeah, so they enter. They find the ruins of this house. We completely occlude the view of the street beyond. Then we do this trick where we have them crawl under a wall like this. And let's see, is he going to do it? Yeah, he crawls under the wall. And then when he comes out, we get a view of the street. He's actually hiding a little bit. I don't know if he'll look. Yes, there's this moment where there's a lot of danger. The street is being patrolled by a tank with enemies. And we want the player to sort of, we don't want them to see this beforehand. It's kind of a surprise where they're running forward, and they enter a very dangerous area. And then we make them hide and only see it when they're supposed to. And we see the enemy walk by, they walk out of the zone, and we can see them, and then we run behind their backs like this. And we sneak past the enemy as they walk down the street. So we wanted to sort of hide that and only have them see it. Oh, this guy started to shoot at them. Yeah. Okay, so that's one way. Then we did this a lot. We moved from set piece to set piece. Like, now we move through the level. These are the ruined backyards. We see some, like right here, this was a little bit, if I back this up, we do a little bit of foreshadowing about, not everyone would even notice this, but we see, like right here in front of the player, we framed this. This is kind of a reveal here even. You see, like, we just moved into this backyard and now we see the landing gear of a plane. So we're telling this story of you know, parts of a plane or in a suburban neighborhood. That's really incongruous. It doesn't seem like that should be. It's a bit of foreshadowing. We see overhead, we see a helicopter fly overhead. We know there's danger in the distance. Then we move through these ruined houses and we come out into another backyard and we see here, we do another bit of framing, which is, let me just pop that over. We see this, the tail of a plane, which again seems really strange and it shouldn't be there. So then I did occlusion in like 3 different steps here. I did, to tell the story of this plane crash, I did first the landing gear in the backyard, and then over the fence, you see the tail of a plane. And then finally, I did this reveal here as you climb up into a child's treehouse. And then you finally are able to see what's really going on here. Once you get to the top, you see an entirely crashed plane in a suburban neighborhood. And you're introduced not only to the story of this crashed plane, but you're also introduced to your next combat area, which this now works as a combat arena. So there were different reasons for occluding it. Like I said, I realized in these assignments, they can be a little bit abstract sometimes because you're not given a very clear mission or whatever like that to build. So it can be a little different in that regard. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. I'm going to go back to the concept art here and do some building. So yeah, so let's see. I'm just going to take my pieces of geometry and move them off to the side. In fact, I don't even know. Let's go back to my terrain. Maybe I can paint it. Okay, fix that. Okay. See, I'm not even sure if I'm going to use the terrain. Yeah, let's just move it as well. I'll probably start with building with really large blocks in the beginning here. So maybe I put these at an angle that seems like legitimate for the player to be able to walk on them. So like I think I was mentioning, yeah, I mentioned in the concept art viewing before that these are positive spaces, but they really just become ground planes because they're so big. So they end up seeming more like negative space, like there's nothing on top of them. So yeah, building off the concept art, let's see about, I'll see about how I can do a bit of reveal here. That could work. Say I want to stage an area where I want the player to be able to see something distinct. And I think even though it looks really cool in the concept art to see a guy standing on a diagonal like that, I'm gonna try to make it a little more clear to the player that I want them to linger in a certain area. So I think what I'll do is I'll break this up a little bit. And let's see, probably more. I think I need to occlude this even more. Yeah, I'll raise it up a little more like that. Trying to get that kind of bizarre extreme geometry feeling that's in the Maze Runner concept art. So if I do that, let's see, and I get that extreme kind of framing element like this. And I think what I'll do is, let's say for now I use this, maybe this represents my my treasure. This represents maybe that kind of golden machine in the distance. But I'll scale it up because I want it to be important and big. But I want to put it in the distance. How far in the distance? I don't know. Let's see. If you figure that I want the player to eventually stand here and see it. So yeah, I'll just kind of do that. Okay, so let's see about this. Maybe I'll add this guy in here and make him really massive. Right now I'm going for that sort of middle ground that you see in the picture. I'm trying to create how they frame the eventual piece of geometry here that makes up the sort of golden machine. So like I said, if you start simple, you can add the detail where you want it later. Like, don't worry about that too much at the start. Like I'm just kind of drawing, at this point you can see I'm just kind of drawing out what I see in the concept art. This kind of harkens back to the first assignment that we did last week, which was, you know, it was about the recreating the concept art from 2D to 3D in a meaningful way. Okay, why not? I guess that'll work. Maybe I'll do something different here. Maybe, yeah, maybe I want to make this look like, here's an idea. Maybe this will work. Maybe I want this to be a path that the player can reach later on. So I'll actually start to think about making a space they can enter down there. Maybe that's really the interesting part of this. You can kind of see it in the concept art a little bit, like this is kind of a hollow space between slabs. So I'm going to pretend like maybe I want the player to be able to enter through this. Maybe this is a doorway they can enter in. And I want them to be able to see that kind of in the distance. Let's see. My scale's probably getting a little too big here. I don't know. Yeah, it's getting a little too big. Maybe not. Okay, I guess not. Also, when we talked about a little bit about using groupings of positive objects to make the player linger. Like right now, this here, there isn't really that much of interest on this giant plateau, right? Oops, if I start the player here. Like maybe to make sure they can't see it and sneak around there and see it, I do something like that where they're forced to travel along this edge. Now we've created kind of an edge with a drop off that's maybe really dangerous or something. Duplicate that, sorry. All right. Or maybe that's not even, I don't want to convey, like I'm also trying to convey that I don't want the player to travel somewhere. It's too dangerous. I think this looks dangerous enough. They can't reach it. So the only way up is here. So yeah, as far as, like I said, groupings of positive objects to draw the player in, it could even just be, it could even be small things like little bits of detail on this here. Yeah, maybe, let's see, maybe this is, detail's another thing that draws the player's eye. Not just groupings of positive objects, but also detail. Like you can, it can often be combined, like they can serve the same purpose, really. Why is that not? Okay. I guess what I meant was, since groupings of positive objects can be read as detail, it can draw the player, draw their interest. So we see that, and it automatically looks a little more interesting. We go up here, and actually that's not, let's just get rid of this entirely, like knock that down so it doesn't actually stop our view of things. Yeah, in fact, I think what I'll do here is, I'll do this. And I'll make this go over here a little bit larger so the path wraps around here. So let's see if I play this, will it work or not? Yeah, we come up here and sort of, we see like, we finally reveal this nice gradual dramatic thing there, which, you know, the treasures, it's obviously, it's a really abstract kind of representation of what I'm talking about, since I wasn't literally building the golden machine or whatever that is. Let's see if I drag this guy in. Maybe I can make that kind of interesting. Materials, maybe I can, let's see, solid color. This will serve as my yellow, my yellow machine, I guess. And say I want to use color here a little bit too to sort of draw the eye. This is something you might request from the concept artist if you say, I need something that catches the eye. This starts to become my big weird machine. We're getting really abstract here at this point. I'm just going to do a bit of noodling here, as Amelia would call it, but just to convey that there's something weird machine-like here. I just want to get that point across a little bit. Ooh, that's ugly. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail. Maybe I'll just leave that like that for now. I'll just pretend that's my ultimate goal. So the yellow thing is my goal. So Edgar had a question too. When you start making a level, how do you start? Do you copy from the concept art, then make it yours, or do you have an idea of what you're going to make? It depends. It depends oftentimes on the project, on the direction of the project, maybe even on the studio that you work in. Um, where I'm working now, oftentimes I'm given a high-level narrative of the story that's being told. Like maybe I have a narrative where they say there's an abandoned mine and there's something that needs to be discovered in the mine, and I would sort of start to build out what I think that mine should look like, that kind of thing. Other times you're given much more direction and you're given concept art to start with. In the previous example I just mentioned, like say where there was a mine, it might be I start building a mine and then I go back and forth working with the concept artists where they go ahead and they actually paint. They might paint, sorry, based off of my simple geometry like this. They might take a screenshot and use it as a really basic composition, but fill out all the details. Like for instance, if this were a game, this might have been originally a block out like I did, and then a concept artist went in and added the look of the place. You see what I mean? They said, oh, maybe it's old, and they added detail with vegetation. They added detail instead of my big dumb yellow pyramid. They added detail and said, oh, the machine will look like this. It'll have gears, and so that happens too. In a game like I'm trying to think, like in Homefront, there was a scene where um, a football stadium, or I should say a football like arena or field that was owned by the local public school. It was taken over by the enemy forces, and it was used as like a concentration camp for the people who live there. So it was this really, you could tell it used to be a field with bleachers, with seating for people to watch the sports games. But it was converted into this tent village in the middle of the field, was just like a tent village. But it was all framed by what used to be a high school and the remnants of the sports field. So I actually I blocked that out, and it was recognizable in block out as that environment. But I didn't put all the detail in. I didn't do all the mesh work that showed all the special detail that really told the story. So I created this basic thing out of blocks, and then I gave it to a concept artist, and he painted over the whole thing, and he made it, and he added detail and changed little bits where it was necessary to make it really look like a convincing representation of that story element. In another game like BioShock Infinite, that game was extremely story driven and extremely driven by the art team. You were rarely given a chance to do a block out. You didn't even get to do many of these blockouts really in that game. A lot of times they kind of already built a representation. They started with a basic representation of a city street in a district of the city of Columbia, whether it was like an entertainment district or a government district or an industrial district. They kind of built out the space, and then at that point you kind of you made suggestions for how you needed to move things around to either script narrative moments or to script combat. But oftentimes that process there was really highly unusual. It often went right from like concept art right to artist building it, and then to the level designer working in it. Which, for a level designer, that's not nearly as interesting. But it was a workflow that worked for that game because that game had such a long story to tell. It had like I think an almost 500-page script for that game in BioShock Infinite. So I understand why they worked that way, but creatively speaking, as a designer, it didn't give as much for me to do, for example. So yeah, that's generally true. But I think the important part I wanted to drive home related to your question about how you start, what should be most important to you when you're starting, I think really is more things like I said, really simple shapes. like just to map out the really high level of what you want to achieve. Like you can already see we've established spatial relationships from like the player's start position to reveal of information, the distance, to an occlusion of a path forward. Maybe this is a path forward, right? Yes, maybe from here this becomes, let's see if I can make this interesting. I've created like my path. I've also sort of occluded my path forward here, which could be kind of interesting. And say we don't want the player to backtrack so much, so we, we make sure they can't actually backtrack here. Maybe I'll just move this out of the way so it stops sort of interfering with my view of everything. Just scoot it way out of the way so we can see more clearly what we're trying to do. So I'm going to go back to my concept art and see what I'm missing here. I think I'm missing, yeah, I'm missing kind of my strong framing elements on the right here. So let's do that. In fact, I think I'm going to, this geometry is even a little bit distracting to me. So I'm going to, let's see, maybe I'll put in one of these. I don't know if this is necessary or not. I'm just kind of riffing on this whole thing. And I guess they did kind of do this. Let's see, they did this sort of diamond thing at the edge, which is unusual. Let's see if I can do it. Mm-hmm. This might be a little bit too busy what I'm doing here. I don't know. Let's see. I just thought it was kind of cool. Although I think they had it much wider. That's kind of the point. I don't know. It's actually, I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess it's kind of too hard to tell exactly in the concept art. So I'll just kind of let that sit the way I had it. Oops. And I guess that's fine for now. Okay, so we get up here. Actually, I think I need a bigger framing element for that. Maybe I can just increase this thing. Okay, That's not bad. Yeah, okay. I see, okay. I didn't quite have it in as interesting a way as it could have been. Yeah, okay, maybe this was angled down a little bit. There's some pretty nice dynamic angles in this thing. I'm trying to sort of recreate them as best I can without spending a lifetime on it. Okay, so they had this element here. Okay, it was actually two elements they kind of did. This was kind of one. In fact, I think to make it interesting, I'm going to, like I said, I want to eventually create an area that I can enter down there. So to do that, I'm going to make it like this. And then I'm going to add, let's see, really big shape here, I guess. Question is, was it forward or backward? I don't know. And you have to extrapolate a little from concept art, and you may not get everything exactly as it was originally made, but that doesn't always matter. You're kind of going for the spirit of the thing, really. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like in the concept art, for instance, there's all this stuff over here. And I'm not sure if, like, you know, we're seeing this from like an omniscient camera. Like if this is the player, like obviously the player camera would be viewing it from this point right here. So we have to kind of extrapolate a little bit. It's kind of what I'm doing. Like this is more like the view right here. Yeah, like that's more the view from like the painting's camera, a little bit more like that. Let's see. So I'm gonna try to make these interesting too. Like I like this idea that there's even this crazy diagonal ceiling going on here. So I'm gonna try to like make sure that's always part of the whole thing, almost like it's mostly covering up the sky. I think it's more interesting if we can't even really see the sky here. It makes the area feel more oppressively huge, kind of that way. So yeah, so at some point, it's an interesting back and forth between building out the space and then actually like stopping to build the space just so it matches the visuals and frames things the way you want. Like I said, this is now framed. That's good. But also, you have to start wondering like, okay, so where's the player going to walk through this, right? So we've already created up here. They can see, they stop and they see things. Maybe we actually add more detail down there to show that this is a place you want to go eventually. So maybe we frame this a little more clearly with maybe like a little more detail on these pillars. Not sure, did we lose someone or someone joined? I just heard a noise like somebody left the left the Q&A. Sometimes it just kind of freaks out and makes noises, though, I've noticed a few times. All right, so I'm putting these pillars here, like I said, to make small positive objects where the player lingers. Let's do this. Let's rotate this 90. This 90, let's see if that'll do what I want. Almost trying to make it look like an entrance. It kind of does. A little bit. A little bit. Oh, by chance, these angles lined up. How funny is that? Okay, this is weird. I'm going to rotate this guy. Maybe this guy too. And I mean, I do realize I'm using these things as really, that's not right, as really abstract bits of geometry now. Like you can tell these were supposed to be broken pillars the way Amelia created them. They were like very simple representation of like a broken pillar. And now I'm doing things that wasn't really part of the intention, but I think it's okay. I think it, like I said, when I'm building out things a lot of times, levels I showed you last week, that sometimes I'm given kind of like prototype kits to like start blocking out a level. Other times I like to just go in with primitives. Like I use Unreal Engine in my job, but I just use primitive meshes, like just simple shapes, you know, cubes, cylinders, wedges, yeah, cylinders, spheres, all that stuff, just to sort of get my idea across. It's okay, I guess. Okay. So anyway, yeah, back to the idea of a player path. Sorry, I got really distracted there. So I started thinking about the player path and through here, and it goes up, it goes around, it goes down. You know, maybe I want it to go, maybe I want like a dangerous jump here. You know, I could scale this jump to be as dangerous as I want it to be. And it could even be that in this particular level design, you occasionally convey paths through through horizontals. Like since there's so much at a diagonal, when you see a horizontal, it might read as a path through the level. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's okay. And this could even be like, let's see. We do this. What else could we do? Say I don't want the player to jump off of here because I'm going to put a path that's near this. Put kind of a low retaining wall there. Sometimes this is kind of nice too, to just sort of, when you're building something and you're building your basic shapes, to just sort of map out the areas where you want the player to walk. This can be useful too. I mean, it depends. Like I'm building a really abstract space here. This could help in landscape when you're, say your level design is based like very much on natural landscape and not like geometry. This could be kind of a useful way to do it. Let's see. It's not the cleanest entry ever, but it'll work. What's that? All right. I don't know if do I need that? Yeah, I guess I did need that. Oops. And to make sure they don't go places we don't want them to go. And this is another thing too. You always want to maintain, the sense of where you're supposed to travel and where you're not supposed to travel. So if you have areas where it's definitely not part of where you want players to go, make sure you make that really clear. Oh, I zoomed out. Okay. Let's see. Maybe I can make this a little bigger. Oh, Denis left. That's what it was. He had a question in live Q&A, which I will try to address before I go about multiplayer gameplay, multiplayer levels, which isn't really, this course doesn't cover that so much. I mean, I worked on a lot of multiplayer games myself, but this course doesn't really get into that much. So I'm going to try to make my final path go through here. Let's see, maybe I can scale this. In such a way that it's interesting. And let's see if I duplicate it, bring it forward like that. Oh, I forgot. I usually work with shaded wireframe on. Just I like seeing the edges a little better. All right, so let's see if I open up a path through here. Oh boy, that hurt. That's kind of compelling. I kind of like that. What's going on there? That's kind of interesting to me. Let's see. This is a little clumsy, but I'm going to add this in here just to make sure we can walk clearly from one edge to another. Yeah, I like to try to, like, even though blockouts are rough, what you don't want rough at key moments is you don't want your navigation to be rough. You don't want to be bumping up on things unnecessarily that are frustrating to navigate around or over, that kind of thing. So I'm going to try to mitigate that right here. With a little bit of fussier detail when I make the stairs. But this is often all I do when I work is I just scale primitives around if I haven't been given a kit. Sometimes you're given a kit with specific, like built to really specific measurements, and it might be because the gameplay relies on it. Like say in an Uncharted game, and I don't work on Uncharted, that was Amelia's game. But you know, they had things in that game that were very reliant on specific measurements, like the distance you could grapple with the lasso. You could grapple a piece of geometry and swing from it. Like that was, those are built to very specific ranges, right? Or the distance you could jump between handholds when you're climbing up surfaces with your hands. There were distances there that were very specific. So they, a lot of times, I'm sure it could be useful in those cases to have things built already made for a level designer to use, which are showing those measurements. Okay, that will probably work. Okay, so now I'm going to, let me see, create the player path this way. Just to make it simple, I'm going to like block in my geo like this. I think this, I mean, for my taste, this feels kind of like the stuff in the Maze Runner to me. Like there's a lot of really strong angles and such. I think this will be kind of dynamic running through this, for instance. Oh, it's not what I wanted. Let's see. Nope. Yes, okay. Let's see if we can. That's about right. Good. And again, I'm just, like I said, I'm often just duplicating and moving things where I need them to be. And say here toward the end, we want, I realize there isn't that much exploration in this level right now. This is, I'm building like the basic, the strong path forward. Later, you could work on this path and you could make it, you could add more paths to get where you want to go, or you could add paths that that are almost like false paths. They're exploration, where you look for the path, but it doesn't really take you to the final goal. Maybe it just takes you somewhere else, and maybe you have an alternate treasure that you can find when you go to a new place like that. So I'm going to try to act like, see, this is now the path I was trying to do. My path forward was going to be through here. So let's see if I can do this. I'm going to scale this up and make my path so it kind of comes right up and enters through. I think I'll just change this rotation to flat first. In fact, maybe it's better. Maybe I make it, maybe I do make it flat. Okay, that could work. After all, the diagonal, maybe the horizontal here now conveys that the goal is at an end, you know? Maybe we could do something interesting like this. Is this weird? I think that's maybe a little weird. Just trying to frame this a little better. Okay, that actually, Okay, I'm gonna finesse this a little bit. I'm trying to keep my geometry pretty simple here. I feel like the boldness of this design is like, it's pretty cool, and I'm trying to like trying to maintain that as much as I can. So I'm trying to keep this geometry pretty clean. It's pretty good, I guess. Okay. So then whatever this, sorry, whatever this is here, this becomes our ultimate goal. Maybe this is where our treasure is. That could work. Why not? And then, you know, we just do a little bit of set dressing. Maybe we squeeze a couple pillars in here for good measure. Whoa, okay. Mm-hmm. And let's see. This is like, I'm adding a little bit of geometry in here because I want this to be like an area where the player lingers. This area could be expanded to actually even give more of a sense of an exploration space, but it already looks kind of more distinct, like the player would want to go there. So I'm just going to play through this and see how this works. Okay, well, at the moment, the player actually slides down this hill a little bit, which isn't great, but we can imagine they didn't. So we come up here, we round the corner and we see a reveal of an important area. As we get closer, we see even a little more of a reveal and we see the whole area. Then we can start seeing more paths down below. And then as we travel forward, we get a jump like that. And we could, like, that's the thing, is we could break up this main path that I built here as many ways as we want, but at least we have a clear progression through the level at this point. It's going to be a little too tall for me to run over, isn't it? Anyway, that's because our player jump height is really small. So then we go here, and then we end up, and again, I still didn't get that right. We end up sort of in our final treasure reveal, and this seems a little long, so I don't know. Maybe it isn't. Kind of depends. Maybe there's a battle. Maybe there's a gun battle through here to reach the treasure. But still, I feel like things are, excuse me, they're framed pretty well and revealed as we want them to be revealed. But we see sort of a clear progression through the level from beginning to end, and we see new secrets revealed the farther we travel through the level. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to address was the question from Denis. He said, what do you think about asymmetric levels for team deathmatch and multiplayer games? Do different ways covers and field of view for two teams give more fun, or is it too dangerous for balancing to do such various layouts in one level? Let me think of examples. Asymmetric levels, team deathmatch. I don't know. Like in team deathmatch, I don't really know if that's something that comes up quite as frequently. Asymmetry. Like I know in like in the team deathmatch levels that I've worked on, they tend to go from how do I put this? The spawns tend to rotate. Like usually asymmetry matters when players hold territory in a multiplayer game. Yeah, so let me see if I can probably explain this pretty simply, I think. Right, so if the player starts, let's see if I move me, whoa, what happened there? There we go. Yeah, usually, like I said, usually it matters when there's territory. So I'm gonna show, this might be a little too difficult to explain this way, but I'll try. But in games like, I know in games I played, we did a team deathmatch mode in For Honor, which was a melee combat game. And also in the sort of, in the various incarnations of Call of Duty where there was team deathmatch games in there, the biggest issue there is usually the spawns change. They change every time you respawn, they rotate around the map. You don't have really any sense of territory. But if like this is team A, this is team B, maybe I make team B. Yeah, that's red. This is blue. Is there a blue color? Yeah, okay. I end up with all the materials from everyone's assignments in my directory, so it works. So yeah, so this is, say this is like a capture the flag game. That's another question. I definitely think the short answer to the question is I think it's definitely difficult and time consuming to balance things for asymmetry. I also play a lot of Team Fortress 2. And the thing about that is there is no team deathmatch in Team Fortress 2. It's very much, well, aside from the arena mode, it's very much based on what do you call it, on territory, whether it's capture the flag, which they call oh, what do they call it? I guess they do call it capture the flag, where you capture the intelligence briefcase or whatever. Can I add it this way? Wow, that did not do what I thought it would do. If I add this down here, yeah, so what they tend to do in those maps and in most multiplayer maps, like I'm sure you're aware, is they tend to make one side of the map and they flip it. In other words, if this is my, like say my zone right here, where I keep my intelligence in a capture the flag scenario, then maybe there's multiple ways in here, right? Let's say, oh no, let's see. Just trying to keep all these in one game object. Oh, okay, my bad. I meant to do this, there we go. So maybe there's multiple ways in to get this intelligence. There's the direct way. Then maybe there's this other way here, like a direct way up the middle. There's like a flanking route on the left. Then there's a long area to sort of battle on the right. Let's see. This is my very quick, really bad multiplayer map. But hopefully I get the point across when I show this here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to just create this as one like, sort of gameplay object. Actually, I think I can just, yeah, I can duplicate that. All right. And maybe I'll get a little fancier with this and I'll bear with me. I don't really know how much I'll be talking as I do this part. Oh, what happened there? So these are, I'm just sort of planning out some really simple ways into the base, as it were, the base, what we're calling the base. Okay. I could probably be a little cleaner, but whatever. So I think if I did this right, I have our, we'll call this empty gameplay object. And this is a good way of grouping all your geometry together. What I did here is I put my prototypes in this empty gameplay object. And then as I duplicate them, they all stay within the gameplay object. So we'll call this red team base or red team map. And then what we would do here is, in fact, is this guy actually in there? I'll drag him down there too. Okay, so what it means is we can grab the red team map as one object and move it around like that, which is really convenient. If you want to build like a building and move it around, it's really convenient. Oh crap, this guy didn't stay there. Okay. Then what would happen is, after all this, I guess that didn't take that long really. We duplicate this, and we call it blue team map. And I don't know if this is really going to work, but hopefully it does. And then we rotate it. If you like that, that could work. Overlap it a little bit. And suddenly we have a map that's it's equal for both teams, although this is a little crazy. Oh, that's a little, okay, that's better. Yeah, so now this is why we flip maps in multiplayer, because you can see now, although we can't see that, wait a minute, what did I do? Oh, there we go. Keep losing my my flags or my whatever it is, my intelligence. Okay, so yeah, So now we see when we flip it, we built things are reversed, but they still have, each team has the same strategic advantages if they're defending their territory. They have the same number of choke points into the level, like to reach the treasure. It can still be attacked from these various angles on each side. So players don't have to learn a new map if they switch spawn positions in the map. And when they enter the other team's base, they already know the layout. They know how to get to their intel because it's the same way that the other team will get to their intel on their side of the map. So yeah, that's I realize that's not the exact answer you were looking for, but it's I'm trying to show why it is better to do what you're saying, to well, to not do different layouts on either side of the map for each team. I just don't think it applies to team deathmatch so much. I mean, I guess it would if the spawns never change. It might apply a little more in a team deathmatch map, but most of the team deathmatch games I play, the spawns move. It's just it helps keep the gameplay fresh, and it helps avoid this weird problem of players knowing where other players are going to spawn and knowing the geometry that will be around their spawn every time. It could lead to things like spawn camping, things you don't want. So yeah, I guess that's the best way I can answer that. So I guess I'll end there. I hope this was informative to you guys. It shows a little bit of concepts here. You could, like I said before, you could do even more than I did, really. If you wanted the players to explore more, you could work more on adding little bits of positive groupings of positive objects that invite the player to linger a little more. You could do that. Let's see if I. Yeah, like you could make a plateau here that makes the player want to explore a little bit. That could be kind of interesting. Say you recess the space, you add you make this more of an open plane to explore. And then you could add in things like, again, you could add in these groupings of objects. Let me try to like, you could even add in just one object or two. I think I'll scale this down to 0.5. Like we suddenly make this a little grouping. We also help give this a sense of identity. That's another thing Amelia was talking about. So we start thinking about not just randomly grouping objects together, although there could be randomly placed groups of rubble that seem interesting, but you have to kind of think about why is it there. Like I said, give an identity to it, whether it's narrative or just spatially. So suddenly you could see this, and this could look interesting to you as a player, like when you play it. Oh, I'm going to be spawning elsewhere, aren't I now? Okay. Where's my cowboy? My cowboy is over in the multiplayer map. And now he's way over there. Okay, so let me try it now. I'll be spawning the wrong direction, but that's okay. So yeah, we go up here. We go this way. We go here. And there's this jumping puzzle. And then, it makes us kind of want to like look around here a little bit and see why this is here, despite my floating geometry. This is kind of an inviting space now to sort of stop and take a small bit of exploration. Okay, yeah, I guess that's about it for this week. If you have any questions, always feel free to shoot them my way. I realize now I looked at there'll be more prototypes included for next week's assignment. Sometime today I will, I think I'm gonna have to, it seems like there's some issues with Unity going on where some people can't open the MA versions of the prototypes that were originally created. So I'm probably going to have to go in and re-export them. Probably shortly after this Q&A, I'll go in and re-export them and post a shareable link for you guys like last week. So that's it. Have a good week, everybody, and I'll see you again next weekend. Bye. Yes, I noticed that on your submission page. Thanks, River. I will take a look at it today, um, and I will post a review soon. Okay. Thanks for resubmitting. I appreciate it.